not Filippo from La Spienza, University of Rome, who's giving the talk. No, it's Willem from Heuvel. So you can see already it's a cooperated, it's a joint work by the Netherlands and Italy, Rome. And Willem will talk to us about Talk Smart, Stay Safe, Intelligent Conversational Agents in the Urban Security. So this one, is it working?
Yes, mirror.
Ah, wonderful.
Okay, thank you. So indeed, this is joint work being done by Sapienza University, and indeed I'm not Filippo, although sometimes, since I work with so many Italians, as some of you have found out, my English also starts to suffer from some of their, let's say, English dialect. Having said, so I'll try to stick this presentation up to 15 minutes. Let's try. The work that we have done is in fact grounded on a European project that's due to end pretty soon. In fact, it did focus at improving public safety, in particular the safety and security of public spaces. You can read here the objectives yourself. You should still feel like it after such a long day of presentations. But one of the key issues of this project was about developing a security and vulnerability assessment. And this would allow safety and security practitioners, police officers, designers of public spaces, and administrators to come up with a structured approach to figure out which were the locations of risk areas. So what are the most risky spaces within a public place, like a square, for example, like a festival terrain. And for that reason, they have developed this SVA, and it allowed you to do a static SVA. And the static SVA was an SVA conducted during the planning of an event or a festival, or during the design or redesign of a square. And in addition, this project tried to come up with dynamic simulations. So to try to come up with a dynamic SVA where you would dynamically simulate risks and vulnerabilities occurring in public spaces. So having said, this SVA involves multiple stakeholders. It involves city planners, designers of public spaces, police officers, all types of private security officers alike. And the knowledge is also pretty much scattered all over these entities, right? And in particular in European settings where you have to sometimes to work together in between countries, like for example the Netherlands, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, this makes it even more tricky. So, the work that we have done together with Sapienza focused on that. It focused on harvesting the knowledge, which is typically dispersed over multiple stakeholders, and also enabling, let's say, this cross-country SVA. So I already told you about the use cases that we have been studying. So it were football stadiums, shopping malls, for example, festivals, as well as a pretty interesting thing which occurred in between Slovenia and Italy. And this was taking place in Gorizia, Nova Gorizia, that some of you might know, and currently is the European City of Culture. So also some experiments were conducted there. So what's the problem? What did we focus at in the paper? And you can, this presentation will be somehow a cliffhanger. You can of course find much more details in the paper. The problem is that urban security planning is indeed extremely complex for the reasons just mentioned. You have to deal with multiple countries, multiple policies, multiple regulatory frameworks, and you need a lot of coordination between stakeholders. And typically traditional approaches for the security planning exercises and safety and vulnerability analysis approaches, they only assume you have static documentation, you go and sit around the table with people, maybe electronically, and you share the documents. And that's what you do, and this is called a tabletop exercise. So in these types of context, you agree amongst multiple stakeholders on the best approach to safeguard the people, the citizens, being in those public spaces. And of course, last but not least, there's very much limited accessibility to domain expertise. So it's typically a matter of luck whether or not you find the right expert sitting with you around the table. Okay? So how nice would it be if we would have some kind of a knowledge base which is shared and which allows you to, let's say, collect and capture best practices and knowledge. and share it with the others. So what has been our approach? The approach has been to help this project developing a chatbot, which was extended with RAC type of integration to further improve, I guess, the reliability of the outcomes of the chatbot. It would give context-aware assistance to security professionals. So in fact, we learned the LLM RAC about the specific location that was studied and that was under consideration. And also, in fact, the approach was to help to come up with emergency scenarios. So an LLM, in fact, as all of you are pretty much aware of, I guess, is quite good in that. It's coming up with potential simulations. And last but not least, what we tried to do, but we failed to some extent, is to help out with cross-jurisdictional coordination. But that was initially our approach. So what are the key research contributions? This is the first system we are aware of that supports security planning, exploiting conventional AI systems. It focuses on complex cross-border scenarios, like the one in Gorizia, Nova Gorizia. This is in fact also the place where I tried out the chatbot. We integrated the retrieval augmented generation RAG techniques. This is not that new as such, but the application security and safety in fact is. And in fact, we are relying here on work that was presented last year by the Sapienza group, as some of you might remember. And what we did do is we added domain-specific knowledge from the security vulnerability assessment, including also an ontology that captures security and safety, I guess, vulnerabilities, measures, and as such. So what we did do is we enriched the large language model with this model we injected it. So it became a little bit smarter. See the title. So it had a couple of components. It goes too far now to go very deep in it, but there was of course a user interface which I won't show, but if you're interested I can show you a bit later on. Just get hold of me. There is a controller type of component there that is indeed choreographing the communication, the interactions between all of the other components, including the knowledge base and a response generator. So let me skip this one. Now, what we did do is, in order to add more knowledge to the LLM, we enriched it with an ontology. For that reason, we did do some good old ontology engineering. For a little bit older under you, you might know ontology engineering from way back from the 90s and 20s. We did do a lot of RDF, but typically we found it pretty hard to find good applications. And what I find wonderful myself is these days, all these techniques that we were studying 10, 20, 30 years ago, including multi-agent systems, become very much relevant again. So it was a very fun exercise for me to be part of this paper. So we did have this case study, pretty richly described in the article, taking place at the Piazza Transalpina, which sits in the middle of the border between Slovenia. So if you walk 1 meter, you are in Italy, and the other way around, right? So, and that was a hell of a challenge to have police officers, security, I guess, of professionals, urban planners, and other administrators to work together and to make use of the same knowledge base, the same premises, the same approach, right? Which you would like to have in these circumstances. So we did run a couple of tests and checks, and we, for example, generated 5 scenarios that we gave to the security professionals, and we got some feedback. And all in all, the approach worked quite reasonable. This is not an eye test, but this is an example of a couple of the queries that we have been asking to the system. They were related to the SVA, the safety vulnerability assessment, as well as the dynamic scenario generation, which we then fed back to the officials to gain some initial, I guess, feeling of the validity of this work. So there's a truckload of validations. So one of them is that this is really core research in nature. There's much more experiments needed to further improve the validity of this work, but the first results are quite promising. Next to the usual suspects, the technical considerations, there's also a lot of ethical and security considerations itself. So how can we keep this chatbot secure? How do we prevent situations where terrorists or criminals are using these chatbots. So these are a couple of the things which were on our minds while designing it, but that we did not really address. So luckily there's a lot of future work. That's good for all of us, I guess. So we will proceed our works both in the technical dimension as well as the research dimension, also focusing on some operational improvements. So one of the things which I find myself pretty interesting is to simulate, let's say, the safety vulnerability analysis itself using multi-agent systems, or these days, in popular terms, these agentic AI type of approaches, where we could, let's say, mimic the roles that I just mentioned, of all the people being involved in the design of a public space or the design of a festival terrain. We could mimic them in these types of settings. And hopefully next year we can present some work on that together with our friends from Sapienza. That's it.
So thank you very much, Willem Jan. Is there a quick question? Otherwise, we are already heading for the coffee now. So coffee break is outside for now for 50 minutes again. And then for those who were wondering what happened to our distributed system session, the second one, not disappeared. It will come after the coffee break now. So enjoy the coffee.
Also, yeah, this is like the format itself of the template is one kind of one that they use for publication. So I guess like yeah, okay, so that is just written and then select the pictures and then they see also touch.